Welcome gamers to the start of this Let's Play series of Shadow Empire. The game has undergone a lot of changes in recent weeks, months. Basically, there's a lot, it plays so differently than what it did just a couple of months ago. We're playing with version 1.21U, and as I said, the version 1.2 aspect of the game has, as I say, has really been just rocketing ahead. I'm playing with the open beta, so with a lot of these changes do come in, they're sort of tested. Sometimes they get nerfed back a bit, but generally the direction is very exciting to see where the game is actually heading. So if you haven't played the game for a few months, you may want to actually open it up. If you've got the game, have a bit of a look at it. Before I get started, I do want to thank my Patreon supporters, or anyone that sort of supports the channel through myriad different ways, such as my nexus.gg/DasTactic site, where there'll be a link down below for this one here, where you can actually pick up my favourite games, including Shadow Empire. So there it is right there. Just before you buy from this one, just double check that there isn't a deal like at Steam or something. You sometimes can get a cheaper version if there's a deal currently going on. A lot of the deals actually do come through my store, but not all of them. So always just shop around and make sure you are getting the best deal if you do get it from here. You get a Steam key essentially from buying it from this particular store. Also, like if you are supporting the channel through kofi.com/DasTactic as well, again, link down below in the description. You can sort of also support it that way as well. But I did want to highlight this because you can also pick up for free. For free, you can just go to the shop in through here and you'll find this Shadow Empire Terrain Icons mod, which is what I'll be using for this run of the game. So you can pick it up for there for free. So just go to the link again down below, look at the shop and look for Shadow Empire Terrain Icons mod, and you're then done and dusted. There is also like a mod here that sort of works in with Roya's terrain mod. I haven't updated this for a little while, so his has actually gone a little bit ahead of mine, but this one just again adds the icons into various terrain. Now, before we get into it, I just want to just give a bit of an intro to what this series is going to be about and how it's going to then operate. This is an episode 0, so we're going to be going through, I guess, parameters of how to approach the game. So what I really want to try to get across what to look for when you get into different planet types. Now, the game can be so wildly different, and I want to sort of cover some of the aspects of the different types of planets you're likely to come across, and the things to then look for as you start to generate your planets, or as you find your planets. So I'll probably just start off with a few planets that then just get generated, and I'll just very quickly go through the things to spot to see what you're likely to have troubles with when you actually get into the actual game itself. So we'll get into that pretty much straight away, but I won't be doing any gameplay in this particular episode. We're literally just going to be going through just, I guess, broad approaches and the sorts of objectives that you want to get under the belt within your first turn or so. That will be very, very important. The game has changed a lot, as I said before, in recent months, and it's so much more interesting than what it was ever before. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm just going to go and, as I said before, just generate some new ones. So we'll just start a new game. I'll talk a little bit about the approach with the actual generation itself, but I think I'll just generate the planets and just go through what they are. I'm going to start with the Siwa class, which is your Earth-like, but with not a lot of water. Water is so much more important now in this version of the game than what it's ever been before. I have got spread out selected down through here. I'll just very quickly go through things to look for. We're going to go to quick planet generation, which means we end up with a planet generated for us, and we can then evaluate whether to use it or not. We're going to have no planet otherwise complete. This will then allow us to then start to sort of get some of the objectives that we may be wanting to sort of try to look at when we actually go into the planet. I know some people like to have complete fog of war or complete after colonization. I don't mind them, but this is also not bad. At least you know the lay of the land when you're looking at this one through here. If you are a new player, or any sort of player, to be honest, whether you're new experience, I would strongly suggest that you go to tech level 4. I know there's some purists that like to go back to tech level 3, which is the default. This is a very, very hard start, no matter what difficulty level you're playing on. Tech level 4 gives you enough of a start to make the game fairly interesting right from the very, very word go. So my preference is to go to tech level 4. I know there'll be comments down below, and I know who you are that's going to comment as well. I know in advance those purists that are going to say, no, it should be tech level 3. But tech level 4 certainly gives you a much, much broader start for any of these actual games that you are then playing of Shadow Empire. I'm just going to go with development speed of normal. Only the Supreme Command Council. you really don't need to bring in all the councils. It's just going to drain and distribute your bureaucratic points, which are the main currency in the game. It's going to distribute them too much, and it'll be hard for you to get ahead. Whereas if you just start off with only the Supreme Command Council, you can bring in the actual councils that you need at each portion, each time of the game, before you need something actually sort of injected into it. Now, difficulty levels, the game is hard, okay, so just be aware of that. Regular is now much more difficult than what it ever was before. Beginner is still quite hard. Beginner is almost like a normal or regular type way of playing the game, so if you are new to the game, don't expect to win early on. Hopefully this series, or this, I don't know how long into the series we'll actually get, but I do want to at least get to the point where I'm getting you started so you can sort of get past the initial parts of the game, get an effective military, get effective logistics, know what to look for in those sorts of regards, so you can then start to expand and just rinse and repeat as you sort of go through the planet itself. So regular is definitely something to look for there. Beginner is something to look for if you are new to the game, because it's still going to be hard even with beginner on. So don't expect to win initially. There's going to be things that will probably frustrate you a little bit, but persist with it, because it really is just an incredible game, amazingly a good game. So, and I'm going to allow the AI more time to think, even though it's a very, very good AI anyway. By allowing it more time to think, it'll think of even more algorithms. So one of the big changes that have come with the game, I've got to say, like I've got Air Forces enabled. The AI is now very effective with its Air Forces. So, like, really, you'd have to consider all aspects. It's so much better than what it has been in the past. It's dramatic, the actual improvement that it actually has in these sorts of capacities. Also, just so you're aware, there's things like, for example, the light tanks have now been nerfed backwards in recent months. But the AI builds effective tank forces, and also it builds tank killers as well. So just be aware that you're not going to be able to just run rampant the way that you used to, or not as easily as you used to. So the AI is improving a lot. Okay, so it was already good, but it's really turning into something really quite great. Let's just go continue. Now, when we go in, we are doing quick planet generation on the Siwa class, which is what we're looking at. And Siwa is like an Earth-like, but with low water. So it's just going through generating all the different things. Now, a few different things we can do straight from the bat. Let's just have a quick look at this particular location in through here. We can see, for example, that there are sentient life forms, so we can make up those. There's 7 of those on this particular world. That will come about, actually that's interesting that they've been able to generate them in such a low age, like 2.4 billion years. The average temperature is 26, so it's going to be a fairly hot planet. We're missing a lot of other things, but this is enough for us to make a quick evaluation. We may be able to go back through the previous steps. So these are the things where we can look at the planetology. Important to look at things like heavy elements. This will give you an indication as to how viable mining is likely to be on the planet. Solar irradiance, you want this to be around about 1,500 or more watts per metre squared, just so that you can actually then make good use of your solar panels. Because that can be an important way to then get your energy in the actual. They've also undergone a change as well. So it's now more difficult to get what you need. Actually, energy is another big aspect that's changed in the game if you haven't played for a little while. So we'll have to talk about that when we get into our actual gameplay, which will be in the next episode. But anyway, planetology is important to sort of see what does go on through there. Geology is just going to tell you the variance of where things actually do go. That's high average rainfall, actually. 521 millimetres per year is actually pretty good. That means you're going to get relatively good rainfall coming back through. The biosphere, a few things to look for here is to look for CH4, which is your methane, because you want to have a reasonable amount if you do need that for fuel. If you've got life, like any sort of life at all, in through this other side, you're going to have fuel on the planet. So if you don't have any life forms, you're not going to have fuel, you're not going to have biofuel. You're going to have to generate your own. So that becomes having high methane can be a way to generate that fuel eventually. Each planet has its own pros and cons with everything that does go on. Other things we're going to look at is the water salinity. This is sort of like I guess an average of the oceans. There'll be less salinity in the rivers, which I can show you in just a minute, hopefully. We've got the water heavy metals as well. We've got a fair few parts per billion in through that side. The soil heavy metals is 13 parts per billion. These are reasonable numbers. Now the rain pH is only sort of slightly acidic, so it's sort of a little bit acid rain. In fact, you can see the seawater pH is 5, the rain pH is 4. So the seawater is actually closer to neutral. 6 or 7, I forget which one it is the neutral. So it's getting close-ish. So it's not fully acidic or alkaline. This all has a bearing on how effective water is for you in the game. If we just click on the colonisation, we won't worry too much about. But this is it's also important to look at the atmospheric human hazard is none, so there's no real problem with this. Xenobiological hazard, there's no sort of bugs or viruses on the planet that are going to sort of wipe you out. Atmospheric farming hazard, there's minor atmospheric conditions that don't really sort of suit mining all that well, but overall it's not too bad. We just go, and if I click on random, I can then sort of have a look to see what we actually have on the planet itself. And so this is before we get started. We can sort of see that there should be some farming. Actually, we're not seeing any farms in around there. Some of the other zones may actually have some farms. Here we go. We've got farms down in these different villages have actually got farming spreading out through this other side. So a bit of farming down through here. There's not a hell of a lot of forest. Forest can really slow down your troops, so you don't want to have too much of that. We're seeing some jungle up through here as well in different areas. Oh, there's a massive group of forests, massive group of farmland that's sort of been reclaimed from like swampland by the looks of things back around Fulda. Yeah, this one here has got farms as well. So it's looking like the ones through the centre of the planet aren't doing all that well. If you're going, yeah, we can't sort of see much else in through this other side. But by all means, have a bit of a look around on the planet, see what you sort of think of it. In fact, if I just click on that random down there again, I can sort of zoom out and just get a bit of a feel. There's actually a lot of ocean here on this particular world, which is unusual for a seaward class. So there's a lot of life forms everywhere. Some of it's just grassland that we can sort of see back over through here. So we've got sort of like high grass in through this other side, some light forest, heavy forest down through here. This is my mod. This is why I like my mod, because you can sort of see what's going on. Hills with forest, just low hills there on its own. So we've got hills there. There's not big mountains. Actually, here's the mountain ranges back in through this other side. So they sort of extend up. There's no ice anywhere really. So that's sort of where we are with that one. Let's just go back and I'll just go current step and then just go start the game. So I don't need to re-roll that one. This is actually an interesting one to sort of show how a typical seaward class may sort of look. Now the fact that we have sentient life forms is important. So just go across, save the planet. And when you just go in, a few little tips if you've got sentient life forms. Choose any of these that you like. I'll just choose government. But sentient life forms, if you choose the mind profile in there and the meritocracy profile, this will be around, but look for mind and meritocracy. That will sort of set you up to be able to then make contact with the sentient life forms and eventually get them to come on side and provide you with mercenaries. So that can be fairly important. So start turn. You don't want to be sort of attacking everything in sight. Back in through here. Just go back out. And yeah, I've got a few different things in through there. I've got danger in the zones. I'll talk about danger when we get into our actual site. But danger essentially means that there's something close to one of your assets within 2 hexes of one of your assets. So if we just press the number 1 key, we can see a few different things where we started off. One of the interesting things now is that water is always going to be probably your number 1 priority if you don't start off with an ice mine or some sort of way of collecting. In fact, there's ice up through here. If this is permafrost, we will then be able to make an ice mine that is always viable. So if we have a bit of a look at this one through here, this is unlimited water at level 9. So we've got so it's easy for us to sort of get water from that location. This should all be unlimited water with this sort of ice that we actually have, the snow and the ice that we see up the top through there. So that's all actually unlimited. We do actually have a water location here, which is level 8. This is how easy it is to mine. So level 8 is pretty good, but there is sort of limited water there. But this may be better for us because we can at least protect this sort of close area. We did get the warning that it was danger, which means that there's some sort of animal. Now, if we have a quick look and see what do we have around, this is a state. That's actually, what do we have in here? This is another state back in through that other side. Just trying to see if there's anything within 2 of any of our assets that might be a problem. It's not unknown forces anywhere. So what we'll do is I'll just go and sort of push back a little bit with some of the forces that we actually have. Like if I just go across and push that one back. So we're pushing that one back far, like there's 2 away from that particular mine. Yeah, we should be okay here actually. This is I'm not sure why it's showing that we've got danger in the or near the zone, but this is like, just be aware that if you are playing on Seaward Worlds, you're going to end up with a lot of forest, which means that your infantry will be important. They defend very well in forest. You're going to have limited movement in the forest, limited supplies in the forest, but we'll talk about this when we go into our actual game as to what we might end up with. We're going to be playing a random game when we do start our actual game. But in this case, water is always going to be important. If you're wanting to just double check how things actually work, just have a quick look and see what your rainfall is. We've got 150, which is lowish. And you do get more information there as well. With the pH4 of the rainfall, it just means the rain quality is going to be 80%, which means we actually lose a bit more water that way. Now, we're going to need a fair bit of water. You can see we've got 0 water coming in at this point in time. And so that's going to then impact our farming because we need to actually supply water. Now, to see more about the water, you need to just go to either items and have a look at the rainfall, what it's coming through. So we've got 502 could optimally be produced in the zone. That's actually not bad. So free production collection attributed 500. So this will come from things, for example, like the river that we actually have in through this other side as well. We've got rainfall. If you just go to the hexes, we will see that there's a river present, a small river to the north, northeast, and northwest. And so this will then also add into our water. Even if we can get across to here and get more water that way, like get closer to the edges. Yep, so that one then, this one will give us a little bit more water back out in this other zone. But you can sort of see that we're getting plus 502 water in through there. And so we do actually have some stocks essentially of water, but we are consuming more water than what we actually have. So we're going to need to get more of it. Because if we can't, but 500 water production is actually not too bad. If we go into our management screen as well, we can see the same thing in through here. We've got the 502 being produced. And so this is the free production or collection of water. Now, as we extend our area out, that will affect it. We should get a little bit more coming in that way. But also, as the seasons change, that can also impact it positively or negatively. So it is probably a good idea to target, if you've got like low production, like under say 800 or 700 odd, you may want to look at getting a water mine set up or an ice mine established fairly quickly. You can see there we're trying to use 550 water just to sort of keep this farm going, and we don't have quite enough to sort of then go and feed that one. So keep an eye on that one. That's one tip I'll give you no matter what planet you're playing on. You want to establish your water supply very, very early on if it's not good enough. And even on these Seaward Worlds, it used to be that it was a no-brainer. You didn't even have to think about it. You now do have to think about it. So in this case, we do actually have, as I said before, whoops, hang on, if I just go and press number 1, we do actually have this water area down through here, or if we can, build another one back up the top through here, which may be also viable. This one already has a road system established with it. This one doesn't, but we would then be wanting to go back into with the assets, and I'll just go by hex area, or in this area through here, just go to construct, mining, and then we do actually have an ice mining facility. So there's going to be ice under there. It's going to start to chew up energy, and energy is now another big problem in the game. I'll talk about that as well. We're looking at the Seaward class as well, because we've got a few different options we can do there. Because you will run out of energy very, very quickly now in the game. So the ice mining facility is now also requires machinery. Things have changed a lot to make it sort of a bit more complex as you sort of play the actual game itself. But in this case, the water mines, you may want to establish it there, or have it established back up in through here as well. So if we just go back into construction and then mining, we can also then build an ice mining facility back in through there. Now we're going to get 600 water through that one. If I just go back down, I think it's the same no matter which way we do it. But it will also, the ease of mining will dictate it as to what it actually does bring in. I think that will be the same. Yeah, 600 is the base. It may be more when you actually sort of do go and produce these. But you're going to find that probably on most areas you're going to need to have some way of getting extra water coming in. Some worlds may be better, but most of them won't be now. Right, let's go on and talk about, actually we'll talk about when you do have a lot of forest, if you are trying to get energy, one of the big changes now that's come in the game is that you can go to any of these forest hexes, and if we go to construction and we go to energy, we now actually have solar panels, and solar panels will now be impacted by the solar irradiance of the world that you're on, and the rainfall. So look, if you've got more than 1,000 millimeters rainfall, it probably means you're not going to have any problem with water on the planet, but you will have problem with solar energy. And the higher the rainfall goes, like I think it's, I forget how it works. If it's over 1,000, I think you lose 25% of your solar irradiance because of the clouds. If you're over 3,000, I think you lose 50%, and over 10,000 millimeters of rainfall per year, you're going to then actually lose 75%. So you on rain worlds, you don't want to be building solar panels pretty much, but just look for anything probably over, like depending on how much solar irradiance is coming through, just be aware that the rain and the solar irradiance will actually then impact the benefit that you then get from creating these particular solar panels. Organic furnaces are very, very cheap and easy to build, and they do actually give you like a 35. And what these then do is, these are very, very quickly built. These basically just chop down trees and make use of the trees. And the way that they work is when you do produce them, they will then use whatever level that they are, they'll then also go and grab trees from anywhere close to it. They'll eventually cut down all the trees around a particular zone. So you can use these also just to deforest a particular region on the planet, and also then get energy from that one. So you can sort of have them operating. So if I went to there, for example, there's double trees in through there, there's heavy trees. They would then start to chop down the trees. These would then change to just light forests, and then eventually they would be completely open up and just be grassy plains. And then it would no longer be generating any power. But that happens relatively quickly. These are sort of like light forest back in through here. This is just a normal forest. These are heavy forest. So you want to sort of be looking for heavy forest for those. But they're a very, very viable way, probably better than most other things now, to generate power on these sorts of worlds. Also, if you're in a world with lots of life that's on the world, you're probably going to find a fair amount of actual oil or fuel, like biofuel, that you'll then be able to mine over time. So just be aware of that. You may not have to worry too much about it. What you may be wanting to do also, depending on what your parameters actually are, is looking for the power plant tech. If you do actually have life on the planet, the power plant tech will give you another good way to give you energy. So there's a few different tips there about getting energy on the different planets. Let's have a look at some other different types of planets and just sort of see how they might operate. Now, Medusa classes are going to be sort of similar to the Siwa classes, but which often will have higher rainfall. Let's have a quick look and just go and sort of start one of these up and see what we get. See what we get with our rainfall, etc. Now, it won't be dramatically high, the rainfall, or it can be, but it's probably not going to be all that high. There are other sorts of, this one's quite low actually when we look at it in through this other side. The rainfall is only 355. Let's just re-roll a few of them. These are going to be dangerous. They're going to have deadly xenobiological hazards on the planet, on these Medusa worlds. But quite often they'll be sort of like almost like jungly type worlds as well. Just see what we end up getting here. Only 101. Actually, maybe the algorithm's changed here a little bit because I'm getting less rainfall than what I used to get on these. And this one's interesting. We've got 14 sentient alien life forms that are sort of on this particular world. But this is, again, it's always going to be different whenever you sort of do a re-roll of these sorts of worlds. But these will always have a deadly xenobiological hazard, which means you're always going to be in spacesuits. So, which is fine. It doesn't really make that much difference, but you're not going to be able to build Terran plants or anything on these sorts of worlds. If we just go and have a bit of a look on this one, there may be other areas of the planet that is a bit more habitable. There we go. We've got different other areas back in through here. Again, an interesting world with what they have. So this is no longer the big jungle worlds that we used to have. Let's have a quick look at the additional classes. We've got the Hydra class, and so this is a planet with lots of water, rainfall, and lots of swamps. It might be similar to a Seba class world or a Limus class world, but it almost always has more water. A good chance the planet will have alien life, so there should always be life on these planets. We'll just go continue here again and generate one of these, and so we should see much higher rainfall on these particular worlds. Yeah, every planet is just so damn interesting. You can see the rainfall is very heavy here, so 1200 on average across the planet, but there's no life, there's no vegetation. So it's actually quite interesting. So this one actually, if we've got bacteria, microorganisms, I don't know if that would be enough to sort of give us any fuel. Let's just actually start the game and see if we end up with any fuel on this particular one. But this is an interesting world again because we've got the high rainfall, but nothing much else really. So, and quite often these would actually then start with life, which is again, the game is just so dramatically. That's why it's so difficult to say always do this, always do that, because each planet will then give its own its own challenges. So in this case, we'll have a lot of rainfall, but no life. So you can sort of imagine it being just a big cloudy world. Just go and close that one off for a second. Welcome to command. We'll just dismiss that one. And so if we have a look through at our rainfall here, because rainfall is the main thing I'm sort of focusing on at this point in time. If we just go into the items, you can see there the rainfall we're getting is 2,472. This is more than enough rainfall. We don't need to worry about anything else. It's sort of, well, it's actually the water. And it's the water, if we have a look at the actual location we have, and look at the rain, we're getting 1,000 in through there. The pH is very neutral, so it's actually, we're getting rain quality is 100%. This is just a full-on rain world with no actual life. Now, if we just press number 1, even though we've got like microbiological organisms, don't have enough in here to generate any actual fuel. And so the challenge for us with this world is not the water, it's now the fuel. Let's generate another one of these worlds, and we'll sort of see what else we get. So again, just going to additional Hydra, continue and continue. Look at this, 5,000. So this is a complete rain world, but we've only got moss and grass in through this other side. The exposure, like it's got very aggressive xenobiological hazards. So there is life on this world. This means that there would be fuel. So your fuel would be viable on this world. In fact, I'll just do another reroll. Here's a weird one. Like we got nearly 2,872 millimeters per year on the actual planet itself. We've only got one minor regime of 3 major regimes to sort of challenge for this will be a fun one to play, to be honest. Each planet is just so interesting because it's always just so different. It's imperfect, so the atmospheric hazard is imperfect, which means that we would just be wearing normal clothing, but we would possibly just have filters on or something like that on the actual, like to be able to then survive on the planet. There's 0 value with the alien tissue nutrition. The alien tissue nutrition. I did have it right. We do actually have forests on this one through here. The hazard exposure level is limited, but no real effects. So again, the drama of going into a planet like this means that our forces are going to be very squishy. And I'll show you what I mean with that. But this is quite an interesting one through here where there's hardly any people. So there's only 100,000 survivors of the Dissolution War. So if we start the game, it's going to be very limited in terms of population. So it must have had a very small population, I guess. Just go any old place. Just press A's all the way through. All right, here we go. And we'll have a quick look at this one. Hope this is helpful, like just to sort of get a bit of a perspective as to what does go on. So in this case, again, rainfall on the Hydra world is not really going to be a big problem. We're getting some sort of danger possibly coming out of the swamps. If we go and have a bit of a look and see what we actually have with the different forces. If we go to one of our military forces, the line troops will actually only be, it's only been issued with filters, so only face masks. So it's only got 20 hit points, which really is very low. So because it doesn't have any sort of protection at all on what it's actually doing. So in this case, one of the priorities would then be to get a better class of military. and you would actually have available to actually make that one dramatically more than what it currently is by getting a model council in and then just giving it some padded armor, some padded environmental suits. That would then make it so much stronger than just the 20 that it actually has in through there. I'll talk about that when we get into our actual game, but again, every single game has got a different thing to look at, depending on what the parameters actually are. Now, if we have a quick look at the items been through here, you're getting heaps of water, just heaps and heaps of it. The consumption is only 408. We've got no problem at all with water on this particular world, so we wouldn't even have to think about it. So this would be one of the benefits, but with such high rainfall, in fact, the rainfall there is not dramatically high. It's only 208. That would then mean that this would actually be fairly viable for solar energy as well, even though the average rainfall is quite high. Look, maybe if we get towards the centre of the planet, I'll just see what we've got. Actually, maybe that is the centre more in here. What's this one doing? Yeah, look at the rainfall here, 5,000. So that would be terrible for solar panels. These are also 7,000, so no good at all. 6,000, but it does sort of come. It gets less and less as we sort of come down towards where we're actually located, and less as we go even further away. So again, every single hex has got its own story with the way things actually do work. But in general, this is actually really cool in that sort of regard. What else is there to talk about in here? Just press number 1. We should always then find fuel, and there will always be fuel. When we find forests, we're going to find fuel. So that's not really an issue there for us. This sort of world, yeah, it really is just going to be, like things in this case, because there's no hazards. We haven't built an effective armor for our forces at all. So we're just using normal clothing. But if we had generated a world with hazards, then they would come in with envirosuits. I might just even do that on a similar world to show you what I mean. Yeah, see, in this case, the atmospheric human hazard, so the actual atmosphere itself is insidious for us. And so the hazard exposure level is critical impediment to life. And so we have to have spacesuits to be protecting ourselves. So we would go from the next level up from what we have with just filters. If we just go and start the game in here. And if we just have a quick look at the infantry that we actually have in through here, just our foot soldiers. And so these have got envirosuits, which will then improve it. So it was 20 previously, it's now 60 because of the envirosuit. Now we can still make it even better with padded envirosuits and then eventually combat armor and so on and so forth. So we can sort of start to improve our hit points by what they're wearing. So this one is not just using filters. So again, every single aspect of the game has a bearing on how you then play the game. That's why it's so hard to say, always do this step or always do that step. I can give parameters, but I hope this has been helpful to sort of see what happens with these sort of worlds. Let's go to some worlds where there may not be any life and talk about what you have to then sort of focus on with those. Let's talk a little bit about the planetoids and the moon classes. Now, the moon won't have any atmosphere at all. These are just small barren rocks in space. And the planetoid classes will have an atmosphere of a sort, but there will be no life on them. Let's just start with the planetoid and just go continue and continue. By the way, there is a setting to force life. I never turn that on. I don't really like it. You can see there it's mainly xenon with some carbon dioxide. Basically, the exposure level is incapacitation. It's going to be always low gravity back in these sorts of worlds. If we just have a quick look at we're not going to see too much. There's never going to be sentient life form. There's never going to be life form, even on something that's been around for a long period of time. So the vegetation will always be none, which means there'll be never any biofuel on these rocky planets unless you force life to start on them. So in this case, this one is just a flat rock. One of the other things that you'll get if we just start the game with this is you'll tend to find that there'll be escarpments and all sorts of different things with that as well. So we'll have escarpments, chasms. So this will be a different sort of landscape than most of the other types of planets that you'll then find. But as I said, there'll be no fuel whatsoever. So you're going to have to find water. The water will be critically important because there's no rainfall on these worlds. And there'll also be, so you need to get your water under control. You'll have to have all of your farming done in biodomes, like in dome farming. And so, in fact, this one does actually have, no, it's still rocky, just rocky plains. So if I just dismiss that. So here is like we've got a chasm around the outside edge through here. If we just hover over that one, a canyon. So there's it's considered a river on these sorts of worlds. So we've got a canyon across through here. We've got escarpments back in through this other side. If I hover over, you can see there near the top it says rivers present. It's got escarpment, and so these are very good for defending. So these are quite interesting worlds. One of the reasons this is coloured this way is because of my setups. I think if I press number 5 or 6, yeah, 6, that's what it should be looking like. So this is just sort of like a greyish sort of area. More sort of chasms running through this side, or more canyons running through that other side. So this will have much more of those sorts of landscapes on them. So this is not quite a planet, but also not quite a moon. The moons will be even less detail than this, and they're also a lot smaller. But these ones, the guys have to be wearing enviro suits, so they'll always come in with that around about that 60 hit points because of the environmental suit, because of the atmosphere. There's no way around that one. And it will always be biodomes. If we press number 1, we won't find any fuel at all on these particular worlds. One thing that often you do find on these is very, very high minerals. So you'll actually, if we go back to our reports and have a quick look at the help file, and then just go across to like planetology, very, very high in heavy elements. And if we go across to the planet statistics, we can then sort of see how that one does sort of play in. So the in this case, this one's got good solar panels, but that can be random. That can be any old thing. What else do we have? Heavy elements, 182%, which is what we saw back in through there again. So the mining would be good. So yeah, that would be, and that's another feature of this one. Because of the atmosphere, it's always going to be rocket pretty much on these, not actual aircraft. So aircraft are not really going to be viable on these worlds at all because the atmosphere will be quite low pressure. So that's another aspect of these planetoids. I'll just show you what a moon class looks like as well. So moons are similar, very similar to planetoids. Just go continue. And when we get there, we'll sort of find that there's no rainfall, of course, there's no atmosphere. Gravity is going to be very, very small. These are tiny little worlds, just 3 majors and 2 minor regimes on these. They're quite good fun to play, but it's difficult because you don't have any fuel. So just go into here, grab these, start the turn. And so in this case, yeah, so it looks very much like, in fact, this is interesting because we ended up with some quite large cities back in through here. But this one, quite often they'll actually be fairly grey, but you can see there's big escarpments that run through this other side, escarpments running through here. So these actually do play a bit of a role. You don't see these sorts of things in other starts, but the actual planet itself will be very, very small. So you can see there, that's the whole planet. So this is actually fascinating. This is all major old cities. The whole moon was like a built-up city. If we have a look at the history of this, if we just go back and go back to the reports, go to help, and have a look at the colonization, yeah, there's 2 billion colonists. So the whole moon was actually set up. So it was set up as a mining company initially, but then sort of would have attracted all sorts of services. So in the end, it was actually the services with all these massive cities. This is more than what you get on other areas. So yeah, quite a rich, long history. It became the quadrant capital, for example. So all sorts of things actually happened with this one. It ended up just becoming like a monstrously. It's just so wildly different every time you play it. Like that was just that. That means that like more than half the moon was actually a mega city by the time it was sort of all actually generated. This is more typically what a moon class will actually look like. Will be something like this. I mean, if I go and generate a few more, just do another re-roll and see what we get. But again, different parameters. But the big factor about this is that it's going to just have no fuel at all. So it's again typical. You can see the escarpments. The colours have sort of changed a little bit, but this is overall what we would expect. These are fairly big cities actually for a moon, to be honest, but not like we saw there before. So that's the moon classes. The big features of those is no atmosphere, so you won't have any aircraft. You won't really be using aircraft. There'll be no freestanding water, so you're going to have to always build an ice mine. It's pretty much the first. If you don't start with one, like if we just go in and and just start the game. You should always start with some sort of ice mine on these worlds. But water will be limited, so water becomes, you'll have to get water other ways, ultimately, because you will run out of water on this particular world. So water becomes very, very important. Sorry, I'll just rattle through these and show you what I mean. So you'll be looking for ice on these a lot. If we just go and minimize that and dismiss that one, just go back into this particular location, press number 1. So there's our ice mine there. It's already been established for us. We've got a lot of water there, so it will actually take a long time to drain this ice away, but we would have to then start to search for more, and we would find it, but eventually we may need to go back in and go back to our texts and try to find some of the Economic Council texts that will then sort of extract water from, where is it? There's a few of them that will extract water from the actual soil. I can't think of where it actually is. I can't see it there. Anyway, I won't sort of water soil recomposition. So this one here is, this tech allows you to gain water from the lithosphere, meaning the soil. It's a difficult process, so we can actually get water that way as well eventually. So that's not available to us at the start, but it will be at the towards sort of as we sort of get into the actual game itself. So anyway, that's the moon classes, what you can sort of expect to find through those. Look, before I move away from that, let's just go to a moon class. There's a lot of people, I've noticed it particularly when they first start playing the game, always will have alien life ticked on. I don't like it personally, because I like the planets to just be what they are. And if they're there, they're there. If they're not there, they're not there. They don't really impact. They can be more annoying than anything, to be honest. But if you go and select that one through there, even with a moon class, and actually generate a moon class with the life, it will find a way to have life on the actual planet itself, on the moon. So you can actually force, this can be interesting to a degree. So if we just go back across, you can see we've got, what's that, Freon, and there is the only sort of atmosphere that's actually there. And so it does have to have some sort of atmosphere on these moon classes, but this will be an interesting way to then sort of generate an actual area. So there's actually sentient life forms on this particular moon. It just makes it wildly unusual, but it can of course be interesting. So yeah, there are two minor regimes, and of the two, they're both sentient aliens. If we just start the game and have a bit of a look to see. Again, this will be a very, very small little planet. Oh, a small moon, but with life actually on it for some weird reason. But so you can actually set it up with that little setting there, if you so desire. But it will still be conforming to a lot of the escarpments and things. I'll just dismiss that one through there. And if we have a bit of a look in through this other side, yeah, there'll still be the escarpments, but there will be actual life on the planet. And in this case, if we press number 1, there should be fuel now, because we actually do have life on the world. So this way you can actually play on a very, very small world with unusual sort of flora and fauna. And aliens, etc. Just by pressing that one on. So, but again, you're just going to have a very, very small, very, very interesting sort of like start to the actual game itself. Like, it's going to be a very, very tiny start. It could be an interesting one to play actually, but I know a lot of people actually have that one turned on all the time. I don't have it turned on much at all. In fact, hardly ever. But that is interesting. That's one where you can play on a moon with life to give you your fuel. It does make it a bit easier to sort of play on these sort of worlds. And then if we have a bit of a look at the strategic map, so what have we got over through here? If we've got Zamona territory, where's that? That's down in through here. Where you see the word territory, actually a Gala territory back over through there, this should be the sentient life forms into both of these areas. In fact, if we just go back across, just press number 1, so we bring these back in again. Let's just see if we can find them. So we can somehow locate them. It's going to be difficult to sort of get through the forest in here. Oh, maybe not. No, I'm not coming up against them at all. So I'm not sure where they actually are. Anyway, let's just leave it there for that one. Let's go back to some of the other sort of different types of worlds that you're likely to sort of come across. Okay, so the Boreas class, or the ice worlds, will tend to be like desert type worlds. I'll just turn off the alien life here. But they will actually have a bit of ice on them. So if we just go continue, this can be an easy way for us to get water through the freestanding ice. Just go continue in this case. And of course, the more the more the oceans there are on these sorts of worlds, the more there'll be. Now we won't see much more than the plains because it may just will be free. If we can see through, there's a lot of ice at the top. That's just one great big area of glacier, and in the bottom there's another massive glacier running across the base. So in this case, there's actually ice on the poles. Let's just go and generate another one. The temperature is always going to be very, very cold. Let's see what we get. Yeah, this is interesting because this one here, it's also very frozen, but the whole planet looks like it's actually now got some sort of ice all the way across it. And so this is one that's just got snow everywhere. And so this one is like literally like a Hoth, like from Star Wars type planet in through this other side. There's no areas that doesn't actually have some sort of snow on it. So if we started this one here, we'd have no problem at all with water, but we'd have to build a mine to get it from the ice. But we could build it pretty much anywhere we liked. So again, just interesting the way that the worlds are then created. The aspect of these, the snow is very hard to walk through and also to drive through with wheels. So tracked vehicles become important when you're actually playing on a world that looks like this. The previous one that we generated, where it actually only had the ice poles and didn't actually have the snow covering all over it, that is actually different again, because that would actually be very, very good for any of our troops, whether it be wheels or whatever, to sort of operate. So again, the mix of forces that you have will also be dictated a lot by the terrain that you actually have. So when you see a snow world like this, this is going to be okay for tracked. It's going to be good for tracked vehicles. It's going to be poor for pretty much moving everything else around. So building roads would become vitally important to sort of move everyone around to be able to do what you need to do. Having said that, getting water is going to be extremely easy on this sort of world. In fact, I think if you start on this sort of world, it wouldn't actually have any freestanding water because everywhere is going to be frozen. So that works out pretty damn well. If we just re-roll one more time. Yeah, quite often it will be a combination of the two. And so in this case here, you can sort of see, if we just click on the word random, we do actually have some snow on it, some ice down the bottom there, some deserts running through the middle here where the rainfall never really did reach. And so that's interesting. This water is actually actual water. So we've actually got rivers, so it's actually warm enough through the middle here to actually have freestanding water. Let's just go and actually start this one, because this would be an interesting one to sort of see how, depending on where you start on the planet, it's going to have a different aspect about how you would then go about getting your water. And I don't know what the rainfall was like, I didn't actually check that, but let's just have a quick look and see what we end up getting. So start turn. Again, water being the first thing we need to sort of try to establish if we don't have any good waterfall in through here. It probably wouldn't have great, actually we're starting off in ice anyway. And depending on the angle of the world, if you just go and have a quick look. So in this case, we do actually have up through here, we don't actually have any, we've got very limited rainfall, hardly any rainfall here, but we would have permafrost in through this side. That may not be permafrost. It may change during the seasons. You can see this is interesting. We've got like a frozen river that runs in through that side. So frozen rivers are easy to cross. The thawed rivers aren't. But in this case, we've got all this. There's even a bit of freezing coming through this particular water. So this would then unthaw during the more summer sort of seasons. In fact, if we have a quick look at the reports and look at the help file again at the planetology, it's got a slight tilt. So there would be some variance with what thaws and what doesn't thaw over the course of the seasons. If we look at geology. Yeah, this has got a lot of different seasons that sort of then chop and change a little bit. But around the equator, it never actually freezes. So the freestanding water in the middle here would be different to the ice that we would then have down where we are. Now, where we actually are, I'm guessing that we do actually have one major river, just the edge of a river that runs through our territory, but the rest of it is just ice. If we just look down there, that's probably going to be an ice mine, I would guess. Yeah, we've got an ice mine down there, which is generating 438. So it's not fantastic, but it's enough for what we would then sort of need. But there may be more if we just go back and look at the items again. Yeah, so we're getting hardly anything from anywhere else. And if we have a look at the rainfall, this will then give us the pH. So pH of 4. So the rain quality is 80%. The river water is a pH of 4.1, so we do get a little bit of river quality back in through there, but we're not getting much from the rivers anymore. Anyway, again, really fascinating the way each planet is then sort of generated and sets up completely different aspects about the way that you actually do go around actually playing it. Okay, let's have a look at some other different types of worlds. Oh, by the way, again, this world, no life, so no life means no fuel, and so you'd have to then generate your own fuel. So water would become the #1 priority. Getting your farming up and running in a big way would be #2, to then create biofuel from the farming. So again, a different approach to what we'd then be doing. Now you've got a few different classes of desert worlds. You've got like a pure desert world through here, like the Seth class. Actually, I'll just go back again, just restart. You have a desert world with some water on it. And then you have in the additionals, you've got this Morgana class. And this is quite interesting. What this one is actually a desert world with oases around it. And so let's actually just generate a couple of these. We'll start with the Seth class. Now this one can have life, and it's interesting to try to get like an Arrakis world, like a Dune world where you end up with giant worms. I have generated one once where I did actually end up with massive worms on these sort of worlds, and it was very, very early on. I think it was even before the game launched, but I did manage to sort of force or to get some sort of life on the actual world, and they happened to be giant worms. If we just go continue in through here. So again, what we're going to find here is there'll be different aspects. Generally, there won't be life on these worlds, but there can be. So you can see through here, we don't have, there's no alien biology present, so that means no fuel. There's carbon dioxide, nitrogen, but no freestanding oxygen, so they'd be wearing spacesuits. In this case, it's mainly just looks like it's mainly sort of big sand dunes everywhere. So this is sort of like and sand dunes are very hard to cross, a little bit like snow as well. So this one here, we've got rocky plains in through this different areas, big cities, big old cities. So it looks like there was a lot of people that were here at one point, but there's massive dunes in through here, but no actual life. And so it's looking a bit more like a planetoid with the way it's sort of coming through. We've still got volcanoes on this particular one. So this one would be great for armored forces in these big open areas, but not so much in the sand dunes. So the sand dunes would become quite a tricky prospect on this particular world. So here we have another world with lots and lots of chasms, some escarpments, mountain ranges, some areas there for armored forces. This would be an interesting world as well to play. Every planet has just got its own parameters, which makes it really quite fascinating to see what it actually does have. I mean, if we sort of zoom back out a little bit, lots and lots of sand dunes in around this one as well. So, but there are lots of chasms as well, which makes these are quite defendable, like across the other side of a chasm. And same with the escarpments, like being on the high end of an escarpment actually is really quite good to sort of be up in the top areas, like across into here, like looking down into the sand sea that's down below. Again, it's just every planet's got its own sort of feel about it, which is really quite nice. Other sorts of if we just go back into a new planet, the other types of desert worlds, like you've got the Limos class, which won't have any life, but unless you click on alien life. But if you just go continue, there is, I think, a small chance you can get life on the Seth worlds. Just go continue in through here, and continue again. So these are desert worlds with water. The way that these sort of then come up. So we will actually have river systems. There should be rainfall as well. Like we probably won't see that until we're actually in there. In fact, if we just go back out again, have a quick look at the what we have. Yeah, we've got 327. So not a real lot of rainfall coming through, but there is a bit. So not enough to live off. Really, we'd need to sort of get like an ice mine somewhere, or some way of actually sort of getting the water desalinized to sort of make good use of it. You've got a bit of mountains in through there as well, but again, it's a desert world, but with water, like more water on it than the Seth classes. Let's have a look at the third type, which I really quite like. So the third type of desert world, if you just go to the additionals and go to the Morgana class, I really, really like these. This is my favourite sort of algorithm for the game. Yeah, this one has come in with some complex life forms and also sentient aliens in this particular instance. The big difference here is that you end up with a world that is still mainly desert, like in big areas, but there will be water in different patches somewhere with some life forms around it. Now, where's some water? There's some water down through here, different sort of colouring through that side. But this is these are the this is where there is some freestanding water, not a lot of it. If we just zoom back out and just have a bit of a look to see if we can see any more. So there's not a lot in here actually. It's mainly around the poles. But sometimes it'll be in the middle as well. But that's actually where we've got these green belts down towards where the poles actually are with some there's a bit of water in the middle there. But these are interesting worlds because you quite often will end up with life. You'll quite often end up with some great locations for combat with armoured vehicles. The areas without actual trees is great for armour, so, except for the sand dunes as such. This one's probably more typical, where you end up with these oases around these lakes. So you've got sort of like the different lakes, a little bit of grass in through here, and then everything else is basically just desert. So it's a very, again, interesting little world, so the way it sort of does work. It's a really nice hybrid of different things. So that's the Morgana class. Actually, with this one, I'll just show you again, because we've got the life forms on this one, the difference between this and the other two types of desert worlds is that we're going to end up having fuel. So we're going to have fuel available to us. So that's always a big thing to sort of, if you've got life forms where you've got at least forests and things, you're going to then have, or grasses or anything, you're going to end up with a biofuel available to you. So we'll just start turning through here. Just go back in. Just move across. So this is where we are through here. So we're actually in the ice down in this other instance. But again, if I just press number 1, there's our fuel there. So we're going to end up finding fuel on the actual planet itself, which means that we've got a bit of everything on this particular planet. And quite often, desert worlds will actually be fairly high in minerals. Just go back to help and look at the statistics. Yeah, heavy elements, 198%, which means we're going to find it's going to be good for mining as well. I really like these planets because it allows you to do all sorts of things fairly readily with what you're actually then going and doing. So there's you've got the in this case the pH values are fairly neutral, which is actually good. So that's all good stuff. All right, so let's have a look at one of the more sort of difficult planet types to play on. And that's the Cerberus class. The Cerberus class is basically a lava world. If we just go continue back and through here, so there still will be ice that we can then mine. So there'll always be ice available. Otherwise, it's not viable to play the game. So we'll always have that. If we just go back and have a quick look and see what this one looks like. If I just zoom back out, so these have got big lava. So what happens is there's lava lakes in through here. The temperature will always be super hot. The volcanoes will then actually sort of create these lava channels that then sort of go off down into the actual lakes themselves. So the lakes will be formed from the volcanoes, as you can sort of see through here. This is not water. This is actually lava. So we really can't do anything with it. And so when we come into this particular one, there'll be usually no life forms. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a life form on one of these, unless you bodge it and sort of fudge it with the other way that we had shown by setting up alien life on the actual planet. But generally, these are going to be difficult, very difficult to play on, because you're not going to have any fuel. So you have to get the fuel under control. You will have to get water established very quickly, and that can only be done through mining underground to actually find that initially anyway, and then sort of moving in from there. So it's quite a slow start with getting things to happen. There will be no real rainfall. In fact, if we just go and start this particular one as an example and have a quick look. Start the turn. So when we have a look at it, we're just looking at this other one that was here before. So if we just press number 1, we should actually again have good minerals, because generally if you've got like a really difficult planet like this for water and food and things like that, you're going to then should make up for it with it being viable for mining. So having a look down through here, the heavy elements 206%. So ultimately this would be a good mining one. Quite often you're going to be able to get energy from everything that you need. If you have a quick look at the planetology, yeah, average temperature nearly 70 degrees Celsius, so extremely hot back in through here. Very, very high solar irradiance, so getting solar panels won't be a problem at all in this particular world. This is a white A5 star, so extremely hot star. Yeah, it's really cool, actually. So this is, again, every planet is completely different and provides its own set of parameters. So when we go and play our world, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be going back through and playing. I'll just sort of go through this one. I'll just quickly go through the way we're likely to sort of do it. Actually, before I do that, what I might do is I might give you a couple more little tips about how to help you play the game. Yeah, so when you first start playing the game, so I'll just get that background fixed up. So when you start playing the game, like of course you click on play, but keep the manual open as well, because if you click on manual and just bring that one so it's just sort of sitting there, you can then always just search for things. Like if we were trying to figure out, you know, what's going to happen with whatever it might be, like if we sort of need to know heavy elements or something like this. Now this is actually, it'll give you the version that it's for. This one was done, like there's a lot of changes that have come in. So this will ultimately then be updated when it finishes and goes to the next major release, but it's for version 1.2. There has been a lot of changes in the beta since this one actually was put in there. But this is a living working document that the developer actually uses to keep track of changes and things. So if you just go this way here, if we just go Control F, I can then search for things. So for example, if I was looking for heavy elements, if I just go heavy, they've got 56 matches. I can then just quickly go through heavy industries. I can then sort of try to find exactly what it is, heavy forest. So there's going to be a fair few different sorts of things, but if there was heavy elements, I'll just quickly see if I can find anything that sort of says that. In fact, if I go heavy elements, maybe we don't have any. Yeah, actually it didn't find any there. Elements, does it have that one? Or metal? We can sort of just, I haven't looked for these, but we've got the different sorts of you'll find information it's very good, because this is actually, as I say, this is like it's not just a help file that's generated, it's actually it's the design manual that Vic, the developer, actually uses as he builds the game. So it's not as if it's done after the fact, it's actually done while he's developing. He actually keeps this up to date, or a version of it up to date, and then releases the next version when the next major release actually does come out. But there's a lot of really, really good information in here so you can sort of find out different things. But just search for what you need. It is actually a pretty good read anyway, to be honest, just to sort of find out about how to play the game. So I do recommend having that one. So when you start the game, start the manual and then go and start playing, and then you'll have the manual sort of sitting underneath your system as such. So that's one other little tip. That's quite useful to have that open at different times. I think a lot of the other tips I'll go through when we actually start to play the game. What we'll be doing when we get started in the next episode is to just go back in, and yes, this has now gone over an hour, so which I thought it would in this first one. But in the next one, we are going to do an actual unclassified planet, which is essentially could be any of these, anything at all. It can be completely random. So just typically what we could generate through here, if I just go continue, I'll just show you the sorts of things that will sort of likely to happen. So if we just go continuing through this other side, and I'll probably just regenerate a few planets if I'm not all that happy with them, and we'll have a bit of a look. But I will actually go through step by step. This is a major water world in through here. It's frozen, so this is like the average temperature is -15. This is quite interesting actually, this particular one. So it's like an ice world, but with major lakes and things. And so this would be a maritime trade. This would be an Oceania DLC particular playthrough. We've got big ice running through these different areas, like freestanding. There's an island there with, but we've got the ice has sort of connected the island to the mainland. Massive old city back in through there. Big old cities back in through this other side as well. So this is like again, an interesting sort of start with a completely random sort of aspect to it. Lots of volcanoes in through these mountains, etc. So that would be an interesting one to play. But I will just keep on generating these as we go. So if we go and re-roll, what else would we get? When you play random, it can be anything at all. Let's have a look and see what we end up with underneath this. There we go. We've got ourselves a desert world in this case, but with a lot of rainfall. So we've got there's no alien biology present on the actual world itself. So this one here, we've just got big lakes. Again, completely different way of playing the game. I love this, the way it's all sort of so random. Big waters in through here again, so there would be maritime trade houses in play on this particular world. But again, there would be no fuel on this world, so that would be a weird sort of world to be playing on. There is volcanoes, lots of mountains. These are the sorts of things we're likely to sort of find. I'll just generate one more, just sort of see if we, what other type of planet we may sort of end up getting. But this one here, water wouldn't be a problem with that much rainfall. We wouldn't have to bother with getting any ice mines. If we did have an ice mine, we'd probably just close it down. Here we go, an ice. This is an actual ice world. So this one's come through with -39. But it had massive amounts of oceans on this one here, but they've all frozen solid. When it freezes solid like this, it typically would have once been viable for maritime trade houses, but they can't operate in this. There's no freestanding water anywhere, so that is essentially just a big glacial ball, a big ball of ice, the whole one. So again, difficult to walk across the actual ice, but there'd be no problem with mining water from here. So again, it's just so different. The game is just every single time you start it up. That's why you can't just say always do this or always do that, but always look for your water to start with. So that's maybe something you can always do. Check and see, like, just be aware of whether you're going to have oil or not, because that's going to very much dictate how you then approach the game. As in, do you just focus mainly on infantry, or do you focus on trying to get as much food as you can so you can create biofuel? There's all sorts of different options for you to actually go and play it. Anyway, I hope this has been interesting and helpful, just in terms of what to look for with your actual planets and sort of how to go about them. The easiest one is usually the Siwa worlds, the one that we sort of had started off with. That is generally the easiest one to start with. And the reason for that, if I just go back in and just go to a new planet and just go and grab a Siwa world, what we should find, a few different reasons. A, you're going to have a bit of everything on the actual world itself. But usually there's going to be a lot of farmers left over in the planet as well, and that they're easier to deal with than any other type of sort of citizens that are sort of left on the actual planet itself. So let's just go with this one. This one doesn't have any sentient life form, but does have some life form. All right, let's just start the game. And so when we come in here, actually I didn't check to see if this one actually would have been good for farming, but we'll just have a quick look and see. Typically, they usually are good for farming, so we'll just hopefully see if it is. If you just go back to our reports and go to the help file and then go to colonization, we can then sort of see that the agricultural economy is fairly high. Actually, this is an interesting one again as well. We didn't have that many people that came here, but agriculture was there a little bit. And then when we have the apocalypse, there usually is, look at the number of farmers. 56% of them are farmers. These have a bearing on the different minor factions that will be around and what they're likely to do. There's some hunters as well, and these are also not going to be all that difficult to deal with. Raiders and scavengers, there's not too many of those. So farmers are pretty much your most friendly. So going on a Siwa world, you can play a diplomatic game very, very easily and get victory that way on a Siwa world, typically because of the amount of farmers that you then end up getting. Most other worlds won't have that, but Siwa worlds do tend to have high numbers of those. Anyway, as I said, hope this has been helpful. I will leave it here, guys. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this sort of content. And I will catch you in the next exciting episode where we actually we generate our planet and get started, and we'll just sort of make our first turn.